Our first speaker is Brian Matlock. He's a Democratic candidate for state mine inspector. I'll bet not many of you know what the state mine inspector does. It's here on our screen. That person oversees safety regulations, abandoned mine reclamation, and educational training for the mining industry. Brian is exceptionally qualified to hold this office. In addition to the qualifications shown on this slide, Brian is a Marine. He attended Tennessee Tech University and has lots of experience in heavy industry and mining. I highly recommend that you check out Brian's website. It's here on the screen, Matlock for azmi.com. It's very well done, hugely informative and entertaining. Brian, thanks for being here. You have up to 15 minutes, followed by some Q&A. Please unmute. The mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Maggie. With that great introduction, are there any questions? Sorry, just having fun with you there. Yeah, so we got all our signatures in. I'm a statewide candidate, and I see that Nick's here also as being one of the speakers. And both Nick and I are uncontested, and so we're going to be campaigning for the general election now. It's nice to be able to get a head start on that. Very excited with all the help that we got out of Pima County and down there. I was getting nervous as we got close to the end of the signature gathering part, and I tell you, it was just amazing. When I'd go out to the mailbox and I'd open it up, and there's be envelopes in there from Apache County, Navajo County, and around the state with, sometimes 4 or 5 sheets and sometimes just one sheet with 3 or 4 names on it. But it was absolutely heartwarming. And when we showed up, we had our 10,000 plus signatures. More than 92% of what we needed to have was online. So the 600 I needed to make up, I had 3,800 that I could back it up with. So there were no challenges, and so we are there. So thank you so much for your help. I'm going to drop in to the chat here, just some links. Those give you some information about where my website is. We're looking for money now. We ran a pretty austere campaign, but now we're going to build out. We have a campaign manager. We got to buy signs. We got to buy data so we know who to call and what doors to knock on and all of that. So if you feel compelled to contribute, I don't think my campaign manager is here, so he's not twisting arms tonight. You can go to my website and and go to my Act Blue, and if you can throw some money our way, that would be a huge help to us. So with that, I have changed my regular stump speech, because now this is no longer out there looking for signatures and actually talking about let's get this job done so I can dive a little bit deeper. So Arizona is one of the top 3 mineral producing states in the United States. It's a $10 billion industry, and about 9% of the country's minerals come from Arizona. 70% of the nation's copper is from Arizona. We also make gold, silver, that you should never put this word in a speech, molybdenum, lithium, zinc, manganese, all come from Arizona. We also have some of the highest grade uranium in the world here in Arizona. Not only that, we are the only state in the union that elects the state mine inspector as a statewide official. But our mining heritage also has a dark side, and that is Arizona is home to more than 100,000 abandoned mines, and only about 10,000 of them are actually cataloged. And more than 500 of those abandoned mines are abandoned uranium mines, and those are all up north in the sovereign nations. So, yeah, my name's Brian Matlock, and I'm running to be the next Arizona State Mine Inspector because I believe that safety of Arizona's miners and the communities that depend upon them deserves experienced hands-on leadership. I'm not a career politician. In fact, I've never run for office. I went to public schools. I'm a Marine veteran, and I'm a mechanical engineer. I've actually worked alongside the very people that the office is meant to protect. I'm running because I've seen what works and what fails when it comes to industrial safety. And when I say that, I like to it's kind of fun to point out For me, I'm kind of a movie watcher. And remember the Terminator movies, T1 and T2? Um, what amazes me about those is T1 was the last time we had real, that was like the pinnacle of stop motion photography. And then T2 was on the other side. We went pure, computer generation, surround sound, and all that. Well, I think we're kind of in the same place here today. All right, my career has taken me into the same place because I started off when I would walk into a facility that was loud, they'd say hearing protection was recommended. And now when I go into a place that's very loud, it says hearing protection is required. And there'll be a place right there where you can reach and grab some earplugs and put them in. So in my lifetime, I've seen this big change. We went from safety being something that we kind of all knew and we talked to each other to something that we would have we had regular tailgate meetings around. So when I say that I've seen what works and what fails, I've actually been there. On top of that, I've built my career on solving problems in some of the toughest environments in the world. And what I mean by that is when I got started in mining, for example, I worked for a foundry where we made drag chain for strip mining coal. And that chain, all it did was get dragged through the dirt and muck. That's its entire life. And you just don't get much worse than that unless you go to the next part of my career. And that's where I was designing liners for crushers and transfer stations at mines. And, I used to joke, our parts are so strong you could throw rocks at them all day and they'll hold up. And that's pretty much what we did. So my mining experience was just that. I was a product design engineer. I was an engineering manager, and I spent hours and hours at mine sites collecting data, going back, designing parts, being there for the installation, and then monitoring their performance. So that's kind of how I got into the mining side of this. Uh, what I want to do now is I want to bring that experience to serve you, the voters of Arizona. For decades, this office has gone largely uncontested with little public attention or accountability. And now it's time, I think, to bring new energy and real world experience and professionalism to this role. And the reason I say professionalism, particularly at this point, is I was out it was in Superior where they had a big mining event. It was great. And I saw a mine inspector there, not the fellow I'll be running against, but one of the mine inspectors that's in the office. And I waited around. I had my campaign shirt on. I want to introduce myself. And when I went up to shake his hand, he just looked at me and stormed off. And I thought, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're an Arizona voter, you have to treat the Arizona voters with respect if you're working for the office. And that's something that I will push to bring into play once I'm elected. So mining is booming here in Arizona, and federal oversight is waning. And what I mean federal oversight is waning, there's MSHA, that's the Mine Safety Health Administration. It was reported last year that they were having difficulties meeting all their required inspections. So when the inspections that the MSHA was supposed to do is they go to every open pit mine we have here in Arizona and every underground twice a year and every underground mine 4 times a year. And here in Arizona, we have over 450 active mines. Well, they're really not, they're so stretched so thin right now that they're not able to keep up with all of that. So that means that this role is even more important because my role as your state mine inspector is I work for you. And when elected, I will be your eyes, ears, and boots on the ground, working with the mine operators to make sure they comply with the state statutes. So the way it works and the way the whole game plays together is we have the legislature on one side and they write a bunch of mining statutes, mining laws, and they're written to be kind of open-ended. It helps make them a little bit more timeless. And then what they say is, mine inspector, you're allowed to write rules. And so that's when the mine inspector writes the rules, that's how we enforce the state statutes. Um, so to kind of drive that home, and this part's a little bit boring, perhaps it's kind of like as exciting as a really well done spreadsheet, um, but it actually is really important because imagine you're an inspector and you're hired to go to a manufacturing facility where they make widgets, and they tell you, inspector, to go inspect widgets, and you don't know what to go look for. So it's just going to be your opinion, and that's where these codes become even more important. So I talked about MSHA a moment ago, and MSHA, besides doing inspections, they do much more. For example, a lot of hydraulic hoses and equipment like that is used at the mines. MSHA will give guidance on how to test those hoses to make sure that it's mine safe, and if it passes all those tests, they will list that as an MSHA certified component. So that alone is a huge task, and it makes mining much safer. The other thing they do is they have a number of rules and guidance that they inspect to. And that would be very similar to our administrative codes that we have here in Arizona. Well, our codes haven't been updated in some cases for as much as 30 years, and it's time to update those. And so that's going to be one of the first things I'm going to do is to work on updating those codes, working with the mine operators because they're the ones that are going to have to understand what we're going to be inspecting. But I also believe that here in Arizona, where mining is the envy of the world, we need to have world-class mining. So I want to work also with our universities to define what we think is the best practices for a lot of this work. And then what we'll do is we'll measure against those best practices. So what I'm basically saying is we'll come together, we'll have the community, being academia, we'll have the mine operators, and we will work together to develop what our codes need to be as we go forward. And to get world-class support or to have world-class mining here, we need to have community support. And when I was going around the state collecting signatures, a lot of folks didn't understand mining and they're actually kind of spooked, and rightfully so. If you don't know what's happening with that big hole up on the mountain beside you, and I know down where you're at, you've got the mission complex, and you can see the tailings piles, and you got Sarita, and then in the distance you can even find the new copper world. If you don't understand what's going on there, it can be very concerning. So I want to bring transparency to it. And so there are a couple of ways we can do that. When it comes to uh, want to have policies and procedures, for example. The mining inspector's office, as far as I can tell, has no policies and procedures, and that's really defines how the mine inspectors do their work. Well, here in the city that I live in, Apache Junction, our police department, to build transparency and confidence with and trust with the people in the city, they post all of their policies and procedures online. So if any community member wants to go see how the police are supposed to behave, you just go look it up online. I'll do the same thing with our policies and procedures as we develop them, so the community will understand what kind of inspections and what our expectation is. So some have heard me talk in the past that when I was talking about the uh, rules that we were allowed to write that I didn't see any, so I didn't think they existed. What I realized is when I was looking at what I thought were archived, ancient, old mining laws and mining rules. No, those are the rules, and so that just reinforces how important it is for us to be updating those. So part of those updates is just basically going to be some boring stuff to fill in any gaps between what the late state legislature has and any redundancies that we need to do away with. So what the community can expect at the end of the day from this office once I'm there is that we will regularly publish inspection reports, newsletters, and participate in forums. I also feel that it's important for that the mine inspector work with the operators to have a broader community outreach. So I would promote with those community forums, maybe working with scouting to help scouts get their mining merit badge. We'll also be working maybe with the community to teach first aid, that type of thing. So another big part of the job is abandoned mines. And abandoned mines have killed more than 400 people and severely injured at least 150 more in the first 10 years of this century. So the reality is you are more likely to be killed than just badly injured in an abandoned mine if things go bad. And untold others have died or experienced serious health injuries with the abandoned uranium mines that I had mentioned that are all up north. So the United States EPA had entered into agreements with the Navajo Nation to clean up the abandoned uranium mines. And there's a number of Superfund activities going on up there. I don't think they're fun. The office will support the Navajo Nation's efforts to remediate that line and provide help, including, if necessary, to pressure the state legislature to ensure that we get successful remediation. And I have expert resources to assist in auditing that process with the cleanup. For example, there's Dr. Tommy Rock. He's a Native American scientist out of NAU. He just has recently accepted another position working with the UN on anti-nuclear proliferation. But he's an expert in uranium, and he's agreed to work with me once elected to audit those programs that they have up there cleaning up those mines. Um, while I was doing the signature gathering, I also worked with the Coconino County Democrats promoting or trying to recruit PCs. And we were up in Tuba City. And I was sitting and having dinner next to a lady, and she was telling me that two of her sisters had passed due to cancer likely associated with uranium poisoning. So it's an extraordinarily dangerous and serious issue up there that we need to address. And that's going to be high on my priority list. Let's go ahead and take the questions now.
Who permits mines in Arizona?
There is a land board or land commission that does the permitting. So the first time the mine inspector gets involved is after it's permitted, and then it gets involved in approving the reclamation plan and the bond to cover it.
Okay. Approximately how many people are employed in the Arizona mines?
Actually, directly working at the mines, it's roughly around 10,500 people.
And where do you stand on the metric system?
You know, numbers are numbers, whether that's 1 inch or 25.4 centimeters or millimeters or 2.5, it's all good with me. I'm happy with all of them. I kind of like the metric system because when you do force calculations, gravity's not near as challenging to work with as it is with the imperial system.
Okay, can you share the significance of abandoned mines and the impact on the community?
Well, yes, like I had started to say, they are extraordinarily dangerous. So we have the two types, right? We have the uranium mines up there, and there's a belief that when you remove toxins from the community, that they're no longer going to be affected by them. In most of the cases, that's true. But when we talk about native indigenous people, that's not true. For example, in back east, where the Mohawk people are, the ground had become contaminated with PCBs, and that prevented them from growing and raising their traditional foods. So since they were no longer eating their traditional foods, they started eating more Western foods. They started picking up the same new diseases like diabetes, heart disease, and high cholesterol. So it's extremely important to those communities up north, as well as if you're a backcountry user like me, you sure shouldn't be going into these mines. You have bad air, there's risk of cave-ins, and of course falling.
If possible, can you provide a status update on the possible mine expansion in the Santa Rita Mountains?
I get most of my information probably the way most folks do, and that's through the internet. So I know it's going forward, and it's going to be a Hud Bay project. Now, one thing that's good about Hud Bay being a Canadian company, and I've worked with them before, is they're an ISO 14,000 certified company, which is an international standard for environmental behavior. So that's something that we'll be able to monitor them on there. Now, part of the challenges in that particular place is they're going to be mining on some federal lands, I believe. And when we mine on federal lands, that kind of takes the state out of control of the water issues. And that's where it becomes important for us to really swing and get our Democrats in place at the federal level so we can make some changes to the 1847 mining law or the mining laws that are limiting some of the things we can do here in the state as far as controlling water.
Does the mine inspector have staff and a budget?
Yes. As far as I can tell, the staff is somewhere around a dozen to 20 people, depending on where you look and what you find. And the budget's about $2.4 million a year on an $80 billion business. So it's a little bit light, particularly when you figure the amount of travel that we need to make, as well as the vehicles that are used when to enter a mine site are not your regular run-of-the-mill off-the-floor F-150s. There are some things that need to be done to make them mine safe.
Does the mining industry provide funds for mine inspector staff, or is it a state appropriation?
I believe it's all state appropriations.
Okay. Has the legislature put forward any problem bills regarding mine inspections?
No, I don't think so. And I was at the state committee meeting. One of the things they asked me to talk about was why is a Democrat good for being the state mine inspector? And I'll tell you this, that most of our mining laws, mining statutes are about protecting the miners, right? Protecting our workers. And when you think about protecting our workers, that's right in our Democratic DNA. And so that makes it ideal for a state mine inspector. So no, I haven't heard anything that's as far as what I've seen and what's in the chapters that I'd be responsible for that would be controversial or challenging.
When the measurement of the best practices is accomplished, will that bring accountability from the mine owners, investors?
I don't know how the investors will go, but the way I look at it is I don't expect once we get best practices in place, some mines may not be able to meet that lofty goal. So the expectation is when we look at ISO standards and things like that for quality systems, there's always a continuous improvement program. So if we look at a company, say like Freeport-McMoRan, which is a U.S. company, actually headquartered out of Phoenix, they are part of an ISO standard for health and safety. And in that, they will be doing some continuous improvement. So I would expect that if we have a standard that's way up here and they're not quite there, what we're going to see over time is an incremental with each inspection and improvement. If that doesn't happen, there's not a whole lot of recourse that the mine inspector has as far as punitive. So we have to we have to really work to have a collaborative effort rather than a combative effort.
Have you talked or communicated with mine worker unions?
I have spoken with a lot of miners, and then the challenge is here in Arizona, as you may be aware, is the mine unions were busted back in the 80s, particularly at the Phelps Dodge when Phelps Dodge was running the Morenci mine, and I don't believe they've ever recovered. But as far as talking with miners, I've actually worked alongside them. I've been inside mills, I've been inside crushing compartments in a number and worked with them. So I have had numerous conversations with them, not necessarily as a candidate, but as just a fellow worker in those environments.
In drafting mining rules, will you include mine workers and unions in addition to the mine operators and academics?
Oh, absolutely. I should have said that because that's really an important part of that. So part of the things when we talk about the administrative codes, an example would be that if you have an electrical worker doing work, it says that they should be qualified or somebody that knows what they're doing should be watching them. And that's where it stops. So yes, I would include, for this example, would be like the IBEW, where they have an apprenticeship program. So I want to make sure that we would say, okay, if you're doing electrical work here in Arizona at the mines, that you're going to have a certain electrical certification. And that could be through an apprenticeship, it could be a military training, and it could be through trade schools. And we want to define that. So it's no longer yeah, he looks like a pretty sharp guy. He should have done a pretty good job. No, we want to actually raise that level. And I do believe that the unions have a place at the table when it comes to apprenticeship programs.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, the last thing, please, if you have a chance to donate to our campaign, there's a lot of money that we need to be able to move this thing forward, and I could sure appreciate your help.
Thank you so much. This was from one nerd to another. Thank you so much. I also want to say in the chat, there's a comment that says, so impressed with your knowledge and commitment. Thank you. And I second that.